Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel yet again. And today I'm going to be doing something kind of special to me because it's something I've wanted to do since I've started this game, and now that I have like a little bit of a YouTube following, I wanted to kind of make my dream a reality and share my opinions on the best champions in the game, the tier list, because I do have a couple of unique ones. It's not crazy, most of the stuff is going to be pretty standard. But I do have a good amount of hot takes that I wanted to go on that not everyone would agree with. And another reason I'm doing this is because I do want input from y'all. I know a lot about this game. I've been playing it since launch. But at the end of the day, I also have a lot of gaps in my knowledge from just champions I haven't gotten or champions that came out while I wasn't playing the game or when I was on a break from the game. So there are some things that might be wrong, and I want to encourage y'all to please let me know in the comments your opinions on these things, because I probably will change them if I get a recommendation or I get a idea I haven't thought of before. I will totally go check it out, and if I agree with you, I will totally change my tier list. So a lot of this stuff is subject to change from you guys. So please let me know, and I will check anything out. Though I do stand pretty firm on a couple of things, or at least some of my hot takes. And I wanted to share those with you guys. So it's a pretty standard tier list, but there is a key right here, over here, that I wanted to bring up before I begin. And that's just, it's a needs synergy, which just means, yeah, he needs a synergy, needs an awakened, or needs high sig. That's just the little up arrow. And then the awakened is a star, and the synergy is the handshake. And then benefiting from suicides, it's a little skull and crossbones. And then there's a horse for Apocalypse's horseman, and a little planet with a ring for Galen's Herald. Now this one I didn't want to talk about for just 2 seconds. The requires intelligence does not by any means mean that you can't play this champion unless you're really good at the game. For me, all this means is that this champion has a rotation that's a little bit different from kind of the standard just go in, hit, heavy, whatever. You just need to think about these things while you're playing the champion instead of just going in and fighting the fight as normal. So it's not by any means a bar or something that you should consider while playing the champion that you can't play him, because you totally can. You can play any champion you want. You just need to think about this champion's mechanics a little bit more in depth before you just go in. So that's all that means, and I want to make that clear that it's not a restriction or a bar on anybody. If I can play them, you guys sure as heck can, because I am not amazing at this game. Without further ado, I am going to go over all the god tiers just because, you know, I want to share my opinion on those. I want to say why I put them there. Those are like the most powerful champions of the game, so they're worthy of talking about. But I am not going to go over every champion in this tier list, because a lot of it is quite standard, and a lot of it would just take a very long time. I think there's 235, 37 champions in this game, and I only have 10 to 20 minutes of you guys' time because I don't want to make a 2-hour video. So I'm just going to go over my hot takes, and then of course the god tiers very briefly. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. However, I do have a couple people in god tier that I don't think everyone agrees with, and I do want to make a case on that. So without further ado, we're going to start in the mutant class, and we're going to start with Colossus. I love Colossus. I have him as a 5-star. I have him as a 6-star. Great champion. I just don't think he's relevant as a god tier anymore. And it's not that he's not an amazing champion and doesn't have amazing damage, because he does. But you need to take in so many champions with him to just really make him shine that it's not really worth it for me. I'd rather just bring in somebody more specific to the path that can get it done, and then only have 1 slot taken minus the 4 that it takes for Colossus to get into his insane god mode rotation. I do think he's very good, and I think if you have a path that is good for those teammates, you should definitely consider Colossus, because he has a lot of ups. His damage is crazy. If you launch a special 3 in a longer fight with all that armor, it's going to be very hard for people to deal damage to you, even through block. So I want to rep up Colossus, but I can't put him in god tier, at least for me, anymore. I just don't think that he is relevant enough in my game, or relevant enough in a lot of people's games to really include him in. I mean, his damage is good, but it requires enough build-up to where it's just kind of gets canceled out by how many people he needs to bring in. Domino. I don't have a 5 or 6-star Domino. I don't have a lot of experience with her. I've played with her as a 4-star. I've played with her on my friends' accounts. I do like this champion. I think she's amazing. However, she's just a little bit RNG dependent for me, because sometimes when the fight goes really well with Domino, I mean, you can't really ask for anything more. I think there's a video of somebody at least killing Winter Soldier in like 3 hits with her. So I mean, she can go perfectly. It's just the times where she doesn't that gives me pause to put her in god tier, because I think I'd rather just bring in somebody reliable that may deal less damage but may end up just clutching the fight a little better. I do love Domino. I just don't think God tier is where she belongs right now, at least in this meta. She's still a really good defender. Battlegrounds has shown that. But for an offensive champion, I'm just not sure that I can justify putting her in God tier at the moment. Namor. Not a crazy hot take to put him in amazing tier. I think a lot of people would argue that he belongs in great tier. But I do love this champion. He was one of my first 6 stars. I think he was my first 6-star. And he just does things in the game that no one else can. That reflecting damage while you're hitting them is completely unique to him, and also just very viable in a lot of content. And his damage is great. It takes a lot of build-up, but his damage is great. So I put him in amazing tier just because I love him. He's got great prestige, and he can really just handle a lot of fights with that weird signature ability. There's a lot of people that can handle them better, I will say. However, you're just not going to regret bringing Namor for a path where you're going to be taking fun and interactive damage, or BS damage, as I like to call it. Psylocke is definitely a hot take, and I'm going to go over that really quickly. I just think the ability to make sure that the opponent is at 0 power if they don't have any passive power gain is underlooked in her, especially with the Horseman bonus, where she's going to be dealing a crap ton of damage with crits. I think it's worth putting her in amazing tier. I can see a very strong argument for her in great, maybe even decent tier, just because there are a lot of things that are lacking in her kit. However, I think with the Horseman ability, I think I can bump her up without a lot of regret to amazing tier, because just the power control is crazy. The damage isn't crazy, but it's good enough to keep them at 0 power. And you can really just spam that special one over and over and over again and continue to get pretty easy intercepts, and you never have to worry about the opponent touching you. So I am going to leave Psylocke in there. I don't have her as a 6-star. I have her as a 5-star. I love using her, especially for weird power gain paths. Or combat power paths. So I'm just going to leave her there. If anybody disagrees with that, it's perfectly fine, and I would happily bump her down if somebody can point out some stuff I'm missing with her. That's going to be about it for the mutants right now. I think there's nothing really super crazy here. All the mutants are pretty okay. I think besides the Deadpools and Nightcrawler, they're at least in niche tier, which is the niche tier I do want to say really quick. Niche tier is like they're going to be really great for a very few fights in the game, and then the rest of the fights they're just going to kind of be whatever. Maybe if y'all notice something, I'll leave a link for this in the description. Y'all can point it out, but I think that's pretty standard for most of these tiers right here. Next person I wanted to talk about was Angela. I think she's great. I think and I have the little Cosmic Herald thing on her. Not really for the resistance to DOT, but just the extra buff you get, and then the immunity to power burn is going to be pretty crazy with her, just because she has so many resistances already for a Cosmic Champion that you're kind of going to be able to get through pretty much anything if she's a Herald. The synergy with Odin is really great for her. Also, just having Odin on the team for the extra buffs is great for her, so I do have her with the synergy icon. I think she deserves the bump. I think she's proven herself time and time again, so I just wanted to put her in God tier and give her that respect that she deserves. CGR, I will talk about for 2 seconds. I do think he belongs in amazing tier, but with that Herald synergy, really does improve his game a lot, makes him a lot easier to play, makes his rotation easier, and gives him that extra suicide friendliness, even though I wouldn't really run suicides with him because you do have to use a lot of specials. I think he belongs where he belongs right now with that buff, but aside from that, I'd probably put him in amazing tier. And then I want to talk about Null. That might be a little bit of a hot take. I have a good amount of experience with Null. I have him as a 6-star. I don't have him super high rank, but the degen resistance is pretty unique for Cosmic class. Also, his damaging debuff, bleed and poison resistance is great. I have him good as a Herald because you can get up to, I think, 85% damage resistance with Null for suicides, which makes him super suicide friendly, and also his damage is great. So I decided to bump him up because of the Cosmic, Herald ability. I don't have any regrets about that, but I could definitely see why somebody would want to put him a little bit lower than that. Corvus and CMM are both champions. I won't really talk about their specific interactions very much because I think this is pretty agreed upon. They're just kind of falling out of meta a little bit, not a lot. Not being able to die is awesome, but Hercules does that, and he does it a lot better. So Corvus is a great champion. I just don't see myself bringing him for anything that Hercules could theoretically take. And also his rotation is great. He has a lot of damage. It can just be a little janky sometimes when you run out of charges. Hercules doesn't have any charges. So if you have Hercules, there's not a lot of reason to use Corvus, so I just bumped him down that tier because there's just a better version of him now, and that's just kind of that's the only reason. I think he's a great champion. I think he's great to have. He's still really good in AQ. He's just not my cup of tea anymore. CMM, same type of deal. Had some pretty unique stuff. Her damage is great, but it's not top of game. It's not Hercules. It's not Hyperion. And that indestructible is just kind of a little too iffy for me. It takes too long. You can't really rely on it when you need it. So same story. Hercules just kind of makes her amazing tier for me. Still a great champion, just not someone that I see myself using that much. Medusa, I want to talk about. I bumped her up from great tier because with the prevalence of like Nimrod and other robots that are kind of Magneto-proof, she's becoming a little bit more in favor just because she does have that ability to just turn off robots, which Magneto kind of, took from her, and rightfully so. However, they are kind of swinging the pendulum back to where Magneto can't take all those fights and Medusa can. So I wanted to put her back up to amazing tier just because she is a little bit more useful now. I don't see her going to god tier unless she gets a really good synergy, a buff, or the tech robots that are immune to Magneto just keep on stacking on. Maybe in the future, but for right now, I'm just going to keep her where she is. She deserved that upgrade. The Nimrod taking down is crazy. She doesn't get extra damage against Nimrod, but she does shut him completely off, which is very helpful. So I wanted to bump her up. Black Bolt. He needs a synergy icon. I missed that. But we'll just say it's there for now. Those synergies that Black Bolt has made him really interesting. I don't think he belongs in amazing tier, just because you do need all of those synergies to make him relevant, but he's a great champion now. He's lucky to pull. Same deal as Thor, just kind of timeless a little bit. His interactions are great. He can stack up a lot of damage with that Medusa synergy, keeping his buffs for himself. So, great champion. Nothing really to talk about there. Same with Thor. Little bit timeless. You want Thor Awakened, and you want him high sig, same as Black Bolt. But they belong where they are right now, I think. I think maybe there could be an argument to move Thor/Black Bolt to amazing tier at some point. I'm not there yet, but I could totally see how some people are. Proxima. There's no reason for me to use Proxima anymore. I like Proxima. I think she has the potential for some of the highest damage in the game, which is awesome. However, her utility isn't good enough for me to bring her into a long fight over Aegon or over Strife. It's just, she's great. She's got a lot of really unique stuff. She's got potentially the highest damage in the game. I just don't see myself really using her over Aegon because she is a little bit weak on the utility side. So I bumped her to decent tier because she's a good champion. I could see why you'd want to put her in great tier. I just don't see why you would use her over Aegon or another, build-up champion, because that damage is crazy, but it takes so long to get there. It's relying on so many things. A lot of fights she can't take just because she doesn't have the utility for it. So, decent tier for her. I think that's one of my hottest takes. Ronin, I just want to talk about for a second. He's in niche tier. I think that's exactly where he belongs because there are some fights with Ronin that are just over, and he's a cheese god for. But besides that, you're not really going to be bringing Ronin into anything. So I think niche tier, I just had to point out that he is really spectacular in some fights, but probably more than a lot of his other niche tier compatriots. But I am putting him in niche tier just because that's pretty much what he was made for and where he belongs. So moving on to the Mystic class, we're really just talking about the newest edition, Absorbing Man, definitely god tier. The utility is crazy, the damage is crazy, suicide friendly. Does take a little bit of getting used to play. Light intercepts are pretty easy, but they take some getting used to. Nothing to it. Great champion, great addition to the game. Definitely the best champion of 2023 so far. There's only been 6. Maybe Sandman or Shocker will knock him down next month, but I do want to just give him the shout out he deserves. Straight up to god tier for me. Black Widow Clairvoyant, I considered knocking her down just because Absorbing Man does a lot of what she can do immunities-wise, but she is still really, really good for those nodes where you need a certain type of debuff, and I think that she's definitely the best in the game for that. And Absorbing Man can only be immune to the debuffs. He can't really inflict them besides Incinerate, and it's a passive. So I think she still has her spot there. However, if she continues to fall out of fashion, I'll probably move her down to amazing tier. Diablo, I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with this. I did kind of bump him up past a little bit his worth there. I just love the champion. I think he's so interesting. I think he has the best poison damage in the game, and if it's best in game, if you're doing something best in game, you deserve to be in god tier. So that's my defense for Diablo. keeping him there. I love him. If anybody has anything that I'm missing about Diablo, please let me know. But he's staying there for me. Dragon Man is definitely a hot take, and I am aware of that. However, I made a video on Dragon Man. Please check it out if you'd like. He is one of my absolute favorite champions. He has always been. I think his just unstoppable. His 100% uptime unstoppable. The Immortal God mode is crazy. His regular damage is crazy. And then with these more and more cosmics that have so many buffs, he's becoming more and more relevant. So I'm putting him in God tier. Maybe doesn't deserve it, but at least in my roster, he's a rank 4, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Juggernaut, great buff. I just took him to rank 3. I've been using him, and I've been practicing with him for a little while. Great buff. It's one of my favorite buffs, probably the best buff since Magneto. So much fun to play. Don't need to parry, which is amazing. Great damage. Being unstoppable all the time, kind of like Dragon Man, really deserves some accolades. So they did a great job with his buff. Nothing else to say. I think the rest of this is pretty standard. I did want to go over and just briefly talk about Ghost Rider, because for those of us that remember, Ghost Rider used to be one of the best champions in the game, and now I'm putting him in niche tier because he can still do a lot of stuff. He's just not useful anymore for a lot of content. He just doesn't have the damage. His utility's great, but he's very much an outdated champion. I'd love to see him get a buff at some point. We are going to jump over to the God tier very quickly to talk about Mr. Fantastic and Mr. Negative. The two Misters that I believe are definitely God tier. And the Mr. Negative, I think a lot of more people can see than Mr. Fantastic, but I have used Mr. Fantastic for so much content. He's just such a Swiss Army knife. His like rotation, just the parry heavy, is super safe. He evades a lot. He's got high physical resistance. He can deal a butt ton of damage. He's been one of my favorites for a very long time. So I definitely think in my mind he deserves the God tier spot. I can see how you wouldn't. Mr. Negative, I probably would have put him in amazing tier, but that synergy with Valkyrie really does bump him up. He can deal an insane amount of damage in a very little time. So Mr. Fantastic and Mr. Negative are very much worthy of these spots. Here's the big, well, there's two big ones, but this is probably at least one of the more relevant ones right now. I love Spider-Man 2099. I have him as a 5-star, I have him as a 6-star. I want to make that very clear. I know how to play this champion. I play this champion a lot. He has great power gain reversal. However, I just don't see him trumping Mr. Fantastic. He can do it faster, but he can do it less reliably. Like he definitely deserves a brain icon. He is hard to play. Mr. Fantastic is pretty much going to have 100% uptime on all of his power gain stuff. And Spider-Man 2099 can, but it's not that easy. It's not as easy as Mr. Fantastic. It's just not as reliable. And also, on top of that, Mr. Fantastic also has a lot more he can do than just power gain reversal, where the main reason I see 2099 being so prevalent is because of that power gain reversal, which is amazing, but I just think compared to Mr. Fantastic, he's second fiddle. Great champion. Rank him up if you have him. I love him. I just can't I can't personally put him in God tier for me, just at least for my game. He's just not as useful and as reliable as Mr. Fantastic. So I just bumped him down a little bit. And I know I'm probably wrong about that, but this is my tier list, so I am going to state that opinion. Cassie, solid mid tier. I think Viv Vision is the only champion besides Baron Zemo and Absorbing Man to be released this year that I didn't put in mid tier. But she's interesting. She's got some cool stuff. She's hard to play. She's hard to play without a lot of reward, so I didn't really put the requires intelligence there because I don't really know why I would. I don't really see a big reason to play her. Spider-Ham, Scorpion have better power stings. She's cool. She's got some interesting stuff. Her synergies are not great at all, so there's nothing really to bump her up. I like her. I don't have any problem with her. I think she's a good addition to the game, but I think just kind of like Kate Bishop, I actually do. I like Kate Bishop more. Kate Bishop could be moved up a tier. I might do that next month when I have a little bit more time to play with her. But just like Kate Bishop, I think pretty solid mid tier. I could be totally wrong about that, but at least for now, not my favorite. Ant-Man. Speaking of Ant-Man, great champion. They bumped him up. I don't think he deserves great tier, and he does require synergies. He's good with suicides, but it was a good buff. I enjoy him. It's definitely a lot more relevant to play Ghost now because you can actually use Ant-Man for some fights. He's a decent champion now. Good buff. I only really wanted to go over that just because of its prevalence to Ghost. Nobody else really in the science class I feel like I need to explain. So jumping over to the skill, we have Baron Zemo. Great addition to the game. I love Baron Zemo. I definitely think he deserves the God tier. I don't think he's as good as Absorbing Man, but he is a great champion. I do see him as kind of the villain's answer to Nick Fury. So I think he's going to be seeing a lot more love in the future. I think right now he's kind of a little underrated, even though people appreciate how good he is. He is best in game at a lot of stuff. So Baron Zemo, great addition to the game. Pretty standard all the way down to Spider-Man Stealth. That new synergy with Spider-Man Supreme, making him able to shrug off debuffs, makes him like the most reliable debuff shrugger in the game. And it is based on a synergy. However, he also has a lot of stuff in his base kit that makes him worth noting. So I did bump him up in place of Kingpin. And we're going to talk about that in just 2 seconds, right after I get done ranting about how I love Valkyrie. Valkyrie, God tier, no doubt. Love her. Little bit of intelligence to play. Striking block can get a little weird, and then, knowing how to invert the combo and when to invert the combo can be a little strange sometimes, but great champion. On to the big thing. Kingpin. I'm probably going to get flack for this. I don't love Kingpin. I think he's a great champion. I mean, he's definitely an amazing champion. I've just had so much struggle trying to get the perfect matchup for him. Like, yeah, there's like the 8 debuffs purify thing. So purifying debuffs as well. Great utility. 60% chance. Great. And then when he gets to 8, he automatically purifies them all. Great. The damage increase for it isn't, I mean, it's great, but it's not enough for me to be like, oh, wow, yeah, I'm going to take him to a energy absorption path and just get a bunch of debuffs on me, because you're going to be taking that damage. You're going to be taking that damage, even if he is going to purify 60% of them. You're still going to take a good amount of damage in those debuffs, and then you have, what's the other tunas? You have the weakness node that was in Battlegrounds last season. Kingpin was pretty good for that. I had him in my deck, but it's also just 60%. It's going to happen most of the time, and you're going to take a while to get there. You're losing time in Battlegrounds, and then you finally get the damage, and it's good, but it's not great, and then you get more weaknesses on you, and then the fatigue node is not very difficult to deal with. I don't see me putting him in God tier just because he's really good to deal with the fatigue node. So I just felt like, for me, at least my use of Kingpin, Crossbones does pretty much what he does more reliably. Gets a Fury buff out of it too. Can do it multiple times. Gets a Fury buff per debuff purified instead of just at 8. I think they're about the same, just because Kingpin does have a little bit more utility in him with the Unstoppable. But I think they're about the same, and I think they're both great champions. They're just not at the top of my list. So that's my rant about Kingpin. Great champion, just not my favorite. Never really felt a strong connection to him. I think he's a great skill champion. I just think there's a lot better other options. Mole Man. I think Mole Man's way better. He's a 100% chance to purify up till he gets to Frenzy, which is great. Crossbones, just talked about. Love him. Same as Kingpin. A little bit janky sometimes. Requires skill. You need to use the right matchup, but great champion. Stacks the damage insane. Mantis, I only really want to talk about because I have kind of fallen in love with her. I got her from the featured. She's super interesting. Definitely takes a lot of practice to really get her rotation down, but she can deal a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. So I did want to briefly shout out Mantis. Great champion. Kate Bishop I already talked about. Definitely probably could get moved up. We're gonna see how that goes next month. I need a little bit more experience with her. I talked about Viv Vision already. Why Civil Warrior in that skill class? I don't know what happened there. I have him in tech as well. Oh, I forgot to make it blue. That's embarrassing. Yeah, he's in tech. Oops. Viv Vision. Really bad base stats. Really bad. However, the need to not parry and just be able to phase stuff, and then her damage rotation does make her really good for Alliance War and Battlegrounds. Not a very strong defender. I mean, she has the worst matchup in the game against Gallon. So she's not a great defender. She can instantly get Galloned. But I did want to move her up just because she does have the sauce and she does have the damage for the shorter fights. Ant-Man Future, talk about him very quickly. Kind of whatever. I don't love him. His playstyle is kind of clunky. I don't really like his rotation. But he's okay. Star-Lord and Rocket, I actually want to talk about for 2 different reasons. Star-Lord, just because he fell so hard. Still a great champion. Still really useful in maybe not that useful. I'm trying to think. He's okay in Arena, but I just don't really use him anymore. Aegon's a better Star-Lord. That's pretty much all there is to it. And Rocket Raccoon. I would have put him probably a tier below, but that buff's pretty nice. He can do some interesting things. I need more experience with him. I have a 6-star Rocket Awakened. I don't really use him that much because he's kind of just outshined by Warlock in every single way. But definitely interesting buff. Definitely makes him a lot more viable if you don't have a Warlock. That's pretty much it for my hot takes. Briefly go over the God tier. I think makes sense. Apocalypse, Archangel, Kitty Pryde, Magneto, Sunspot, Wolverine. Brief talk about Wolverine. He is available as a 6-star now, so I am going to consider him in these. I'm not considering Quake or Magic just because they're not 6-stars, and that's kind of where the game is heading right now. But since he is a 6-star, I did want to throw him up on God tier. OG God since the beginning. Needs the synergy, needs the Horseman, but he can really tackle a lot once he's got that. Omega Red, great champion. Love him with Suicides. CGR Gallon, Hercules, Hyperion, no duh. Hulkling, of course. Doom will always be God tier for me. I mean, Cheese God, also just damage, control of the fight. Rintrah, don't have as a 6-star, but I've been playing with him as a 5-star, and I really like the full buff control. Tigra, oops. I could never play Tigra. It would just be too hard for me. However, I've seen what other people can do with her, and it's insane. Human Torch, obviously. Quicksilver maybe could be bumped down a tier, but is a really good prestige option, and just a really cool Summoner's Choice champion. So I did throw him up there for a couple of reasons. Scorpion, no-brainer. Takes a second to learn how to play. Probably could remove the brain icon. Not super hard. Overseers fell into my heart recently. Great champion. Aegon, duh. Baron Zemo, I just talked about. Falcon, don't have a lot of experience with him, but 100% minus ability accuracy is crazy, and he deserves it. So putting up there, Mole Man, Mole God, man. Nick Fury, duh. Shang-Chi, I do want to say something about Shang-Chi. I would have put him a tier below, but since Battlegrounds has come out, he has really been a heavy hitter, and he's great with Suicides because he can just purify him immediately. Valkyrie, awesome. Ghost, she needs all this stuff, and she's hard to play, but still one of the best champions in the game. Guillotine, 2099, love her. Iron Man Infinus, I want one. Nimrod, great champion. Mutant Destroyer. Omega Sentinel, also I want one. And Warlock and Doc Ock. Doc Ock, I do want to talk about for a second, just because he was really underrated for a while, but now that I have him and am using him, I can see where the hype is. But yeah, essentially that's it. I'm going to put a link to this so y'all can check it out without me babbling on. And I want to let y'all know to please share your opinions. Please let me know how you're feeling. And without further ado, thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day, and thank you for visiting my channel.